Welcome to Daikaiju Network, where we have a healthy obsession with kaiju, and it is that most wonderful time of year in which we get a brand new Godzilla/Kaiju movie. I am your co-host, Kent, and with me is your other co-host,
Jason. How's it going, everyone?
And today we are discussing the brand spanking new Godzilla X Kong New Empire. It's a free mini poster.
Or actually, it's just called Godzilla Kong, the New Empire,
or Godzilla and Kong,
because the X is pretty much silent in the title. So
however you wish to use it, but we are discussing that movie today. So I am telling everyone up front, and I'm not going to say it again. I shouldn't have to say it with every podcast, but I know there are just some people out there who are going to be and that sort of thing. It's true. I mean, I've listened to other podcasts and seen other people having to deal with this. It will be spoiled. This movie will be spoiled today. As I've said many times before, I don't think you can have a great discussion of anything, whether it's a movie, a novel, TV series, whatever, unless you talk about everything. Mm-hmm. So if you have not seen the movie and do not wish to be spoiled, come back, listen to this, watch it after you've seen the movie. Mm-hmm. If you don't care, hey, that's fine. So warning everyone up front. Also, before we continue, anyone who is not aware, the prequel graphic novel, Godzilla and Kong the Hunted, Godzilla Kong, Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla versus Kong the Hunted, however you want to say, the prequel graphic novel is out. So if you are into that, it looks really good. Like I told Jason before we started, I've enjoyed all the prequel graphic novels so far that they've had for the MonsterVerse. So that is out. It came out, I think, earlier this week. So pick that up if you are into that. So, Jason, before we start our discussion of Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla versus Kong, Godzilla and Kong, Godzilla Kong, the New Empire, the usual.
Yeah, so basically this is going to be my last time doing this because it's going to be all in the pre-roll stuff before we do the pre-recording stuff. And this will be the last time we're going to be known as Daikaiju Network before transitioning over to the Go Kaiju show here next month. So with that said, if you see a subscribe button down below or above, wherever you're watching us from, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as smash the like button and hit the notification bell icon to get any new notifications when we go live or release any new videos. And you can find us everywhere, all in one place at our Linktree URL, smack dab right in your face on the screen, / Go Kaiju show, and we're available on the following video platforms such as YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Facebook, X / Twitter, and also available on the following audio platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. And you can find both video and audio versions of our episodes right on our own website at daikaijunetwork.com, which soon is going to be gogokaijushow.com.
And before we end the show today, I want to bring my son, Lincoln, up here, have him share his thoughts of Godzilla and Kong the New Empire. I'm calling it Godzilla and Kong the New Empire before we head out today. So brand new movie, everyone. Came out this Thursday as of this recording. So far, it's taken in $10 million. Up to this point in sales. It's the highest of any MonsterVerse movie so far, which is very encouraging. And so far, at least from what I have seen online, most people are coming out and enjoying Godzilla Kong the New Empire.
And according to the news articles too, it is basically the movie with the lowest budget in the entire franchise so far, really? Coming in at $135 million.
I wonder if that's due to the pandemic, the fact that probably, even though that movie, even with limited release, still did fairly well during a pandemic, if that's still on some level cut into a potential budget moving forward for this one. I'm wondering.
I don't know, but anyways, as of this recording, according to Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a audience score of 92% right now, so kind of down from 1% from yesterday, and right now with the critics is at 55%.
About 5%, no, about 7 percentage point. No, 5 percentage points lower than I last saw it. That's the thing. Like, I mean, critics say a lot of times these guys are more type of films, and I don't think many of them understand the appeal of the more popcorn, pop culture-y type of films. I mean, I think we've even talked about that on this podcast before. So-called professional critics just don't understand things like comic book movies, monster movies, horror movies, etc., unless some of them are real artsy in their own technical production way.
Yeah, just kind of like
fun films.
Kind of like in this one short sentence that this one critic, Cassie, says terrible in every other conventional way. Is like, okay, what's that? That doesn't. That's a bit
does he
broad.
Give his name?
Walter Shaw.
Walter Shaw. I didn't ask for your opinion, so therefore. Don't give it to me unless I ask for it. Zip it.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, as far as the audience score, it's pretty good
it's
for what it is.
Here's the thing with Rotten Tomatoes, though. Very rarely will either scores go up after the initial reviews come in. A lot of times they go down. Mm-hmm. So I expect audience scores to go down moving forward, because that's usually how it goes. Mm-hmm. Again, even though we just covered -1 here like a couple months ago, I said it then, and I'm going to say it now. I feel a little lost as to how to start this. Maybe just, I guess, general thoughts, and then from there we can get into some sort of specifics from there. Jason, like, what are your overall general thoughts on Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire?
I know I've posted on our Facebook page yesterday that was pretty much action-packed. Pretty much throughout the film there, and it was pretty fun to watch, and just the monster. I mean, the whole movie itself was just basically one huge monster wrestling brawl in that regard, and it was really fast paced, which I don't know if we're gonna talk about the plus and minuses of the movie, but I would say that would be my one nitpick at it. I think it was a bit too fast paced for me to kind of grasp a lot of things. I mean, well, and was it yesterday in my second viewing of it, our dad decided to go with me to watch the movie, and I asked him what he thought of the movie. He's like, it was just everywhere. It's like try to process everything. I just could not keep up and everything. So
he needs to see the other MonsterVerse. That's the thing. Like, this is one of those movies now in a series where you have to see a lot of the earlier films now to get a general understanding of what's going on now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will be lost.
But with it was a little bit too fast paced with a lot of the cutting here and there, and just a lot of things just sort of kind of, being brought to you and everything. It would have been nice to kind of maybe slow down the pace a little bit, but that's just a nitpick for me. But otherwise it was pretty much an action packed brawl fest of a movie.
Yeah, you're talking about the cutting and stuff. That seems to be a thing that's been going on since like the mid late 90s with action movies. It's quick cuts to make it seem like a lot's happening at a brisk pace. I think that may have even been started by Michael Bay, perhaps. But that's been a thing in a lot of action movies, because I've even heard in other action movies, some people have complained that it was hard to keep up with some elements of action because like there were so many quick cuts that they lost track of exactly what was going on. For me, in a general sense, Godzilla and Kong the New Empire is exactly what I expected it to be. We went, for those who don't remember sort of my thoughts on King of the Monsters way back in 19 when we covered that, I remember saying that I was kind of disappointed in it because I thought the series almost somewhat abruptly had taken this turn into more Showa type of territory, where I thought that 14 and Skull Island films were taking the characters and the material in a more serious manner. Thank you, Bubble.
I wasn't even doing a thumbs up.
I know. And I remember being disappointed by that because I really thought maybe with this new Monsterverse, we were going to be getting more serious type of films. And I was kind of disappointed with King of the Monsters. I somewhat was sort of disappointed in Godzilla versus Kong on that level as well, because I thought maybe that would take us back more to kind of the tone of what 14 and Skull Island gave us. But then as the years have gone on and as I've watched all those movies more, I have given into the fact that the Monsterverse, in many respects, is going the route of what the early Godzilla series did, which was you had the first kind of couple movies take somewhat of a serious tone, and then it quickly got into the more action-packed, anything goes type of storytelling. And I've actually since begun to enjoy that. I think even when we covered the King of the Monsters on a commentary just like 2 or 3 years ago, my opinion on that even then had changed to the point to where I was saying I actually really like this movie more now than when I first saw it in theaters. And I still think that way. Every time I watch King of the Monsters, I like it a little bit more. And same thing with Godzilla vs. Kong. Godzilla vs. Kong, though, when they were streaming it late March into April in 21 during the pandemic period, I watched it 18 times over the course of that month it was on streaming, because I wanted to give it good numbers for HBO and Warner Brothers to let them know, hey, this is, I want you to keep making more of this stuff. And the more I even watched it just then in that 1 month, I'm like, okay, like, again, it's, I mean, I'm not expecting perfection out of these films, but I was like, okay, right. Yeah, I would have done things a little bit differently here and there, but by and large, fun, entertaining movie. And Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire is very much in that camp. I think I know I've said it to you. I don't remember if I've said this on the actual podcast or not, but I went into this movie basically expecting like full-fledged, like mid-late 60s, early 70s Showa style Godzilla monster movie. That's what I was expecting.
I think you told me that when I got back from watching it the first time around.
Yeah, I told you. I remember that. Yeah. I just don't remember saying whether or not I said it here. And that's all I expected out of this movie. It's just I wasn't looking for any deep, thought-provoking story moments or anything like that. I just expected monsters kicking the crap out of each other. That's all I expected.
And the one thing I forgot to mention too is that, like Godzilla versus Kong, this is going to be another basically Kong-centric movie, pretty much, with Godzilla just kind of sort of a side story, pretty much. He's just kind of there just for little reasons.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a moment because that's a specific. But overall, I mean, the movie delivered for me. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Again, like with just about all these movies and most movies that I watch, I would have done things a little bit different. Does that mean it would have been better? No, but it would have been more in line with my own taste, I guess. you know, and maybe there were some things too. We'll discuss further into this podcast. You know, if there maybe certain things didn't make sense or what have you. It's not perfect, but you know what? It's a giant monster movie about two iconic characters that take on two new villains. Well, one's sort of a neutral. And in this fantastic world that has been slowly set up over the course of 4 previous films. And I had fun. And that's all I expected out of this movie was I had fun. So
Same here.
To get into some specifics, you were talking about it being Kong-centric and Godzilla sort of a side thing.
Right.
I would agree with that. However, I will say this. I think they did a little bit better job of trying to include Godzilla more here because I really thought Godzilla may have had more time on screen here than he did the last movie because throughout a decent portion of this movie, they would take sections and show him doing something like fighting 2 of the Titans, which were I have a hard time pronouncing the spider one. Celia?
I think Celia.
And then Tiamat, the Manda type of Titan. And which I thought was great, like getting to see a couple Titans there.
Because I think the one reason why that we see them back in this one compared to, and I think some of the stories from the previous ones that we didn't really see much of any other Titans, or like I think there was something within the movie that like all Titans were wiped out or something of the sort.
Well, you remember
there were some things going on when that movie was coming out and everything. And I think that seeing these 2 Titans here and maybe some of the other ones too, besides like the ape side or the Kong side, is maybe sort of the answer to an absence of some of the Titans. From the
and my son brought this up too. He was saying, you remember at the beginning of Godzilla versus Kong, they had that bracket. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, the spider one, they didn't show. And I said, that's a good point. And so, and I take it from him in that, you know, these Titans, we didn't see them in that. It's March Madness in this NCAA style bracket of either Kong and Godzilla taking on these 2 Titans. Now, granted, Celia had been there, I think, since 19. This Tiamat, I don't remember seeing at all.
I know. I've heard of the name Tiamat in Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Oh, okay.
And then I know we've at least seen Celia, I think, towards the end when all those monsters kind of gathered around Godzilla. Yeah.
I thought, too, it was also in one of those quick cuts, like in the middle of that movie where they were showing the different Titans.
I think so, too. Yeah.
Cities. But I think they did a better job here of handling Godzilla. Would I still have loved more Godzilla? Oh, absolutely. I still would have loved more Godzilla. With that being said, though, I'm not saying I dislike the Kong stuff. And in fact, I think the Kong stuff here is better than what we got in Godzilla versus Kong. I almost said Godzilla versus Godzilla.
We're not quite there yet.
But I think they did better on both fronts. I think the Kong stuff was more entertaining this time, and they included more Godzilla, which is a good thing as well.
As far as the amount of Godzilla in this one and the previous one, I'm not entirely sure. I'm certain someone's going to maybe do some kind of screen time video thing comparing the two, see how much screen time Godzilla had between the 2 movies. I'm not certain yet on my end if he had any more time here or in the previous one, but to me it just felt a little bit less in a way, and it didn't quite seem like he was a little bit sidelined more compared to the last movie in a way where he had them but you had Godzilla, I think, sort of more involved because pretty much you had both of them duking out against each other before facing Mechagodzilla in the previous movie here. Whereas, I mean, we've already seen these two duke it out in the previous movie, so
they're gonna do it again.
But just for a short amount of time this time around before they quote unquote team up to battle against Scar King and Shimo towards the end there.
Yeah. That's one of the things, though, I will say about Adam Wingard, because this is his second film in the franchise. And I would have to say that even though, yes, I mean, even though I think there's maybe more Godzilla action here, I will say that he definitely does focus more on Kong. And I think a lot of that is because Kong is closer related to us. And so therefore the human characters and even the audience can connect with that character, giant monster character, more than they can Godzilla, which I understand. But there still are ways you can effectively incorporate Godzilla just as much into the film. And so if this movie does well enough and they end up not only deciding to make a sequel to this one, but bringing Wingard on again, and he said he's got more ideas as far as the story moving forward. If Wingard somehow finds our little podunk podcast and like hears us, I would implore him to, figure out a way to incorporate Godzilla more. I personally think he is in the right. He's making the right steps with this movie to incorporate Godzilla more, in my opinion. But there still should be more, and that I would say is Wingard's maybe biggest issue with the MonsterVerse movies that he has done so far, is that I don't think he's incorporating Godzilla as much as he really not just could, but should.
I would say, in my opinion, maybe the only way to possibly get Godzilla more involved, if they try to do that for the next film, is possibly maybe license one of his more known foes, like they did for King Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, Rodan, Mothra. Maybe try to get some other familiar face from his side of the franchise into making him maybe more powerful in a way, and having make that more centralized for Godzilla, or something in the way of the sorts. That, to me, that could be the only way to centralize Godzilla more.
Yeah. What'd you think of sort of the human characters in the story here?
I'd say this time around, compared to Godzilla vs. Kong, they didn't seem all that too important. It was just sort of more, and it was also more straightforward with their story. And I've been reading a lot of the other comments on the web here that where some of the people in this movie were sort of like wrestling commentators, kind of giving us like recaps on what this monster is going to do next, or what they're going to go to next, that sort of thing. And you can sort of feel it that way. And it's just kind of, there's sort of our, how would you say, maybe like a vessel or a bridge to kind of
translators for the audience,
translators or a bridge for the audience to kind of know what's going on with the whole situation that's going on around them there. But it's, and I would say, as far as this sort of cast and comparing it with all the other casts in the MonsterVerse so far, I'd probably maybe say maybe the least utilized type of human cast in the MonsterVerse franchise so far. And maybe I would hate to say the worst so far.
I would say forgettable, more forgettable.
Yeah, I would say more or less forgettable.
Even though a couple of them, like three of them at least came back from the last movie.
But I would at least say the Trapper guy, I'd say he's pretty interesting.
He's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's not too much. Mm-hmm. I noticed too that this movie, I think out of all the MonsterVerse movies so far, is so much more monster centric than all the other ones. Because I noticed that too about midway or so through the film, in that, kind of like you said, they're sort of like commentators. And so they're just along for the ride. The humans very rarely, if at all, very rarely, because they don't do nothing. They do a couple things. But by and large, they, I think, do far less in this story than they have done in the previous four films. And so most of what's happening in this film is driven by what's being done by the monsters, which, again, for people who have been maybe even after Godzilla versus Kong wanting more monster stuff and the monsters to drive the action more than the people, I would say this is definitely for sure the first movie in which, it's more or less like 98% of the time what's going on is being driven by the monsters. And it's more monster centric this time.
Yeah. And that's sort of where I was saying that the conclusion, as far as the human side of the story in this movie, is pretty much at least the most forgettable in the entire MonsterVerse franchise so far.
Yeah. I want to talk about Kaiju, the stars of the film. I mean, again, we could start in all sorts of different places here. I want to start with Godzilla and Kong, our stars here. Again, other than the fact that it would have been nice to have still even more Godzilla, I just dug Godzilla. I mean, again, this dude continues to be this you don't mess with me type of Titan. I like the fact that Wingard, he solved the issue that he had with, I think a lot of people had with the last movie, in that he just got his butt handed to him by Mechagodzilla, which, I mean, is fine on one level, but the fact he hardly got a punch in was just unacceptable. And the fact that Godzilla this time, I could even argue, is maybe even too overpowered here. Like, he went from being, definitely powerful to take down Kong, but then somehow not even close to even going toe to toe with Mechagodzilla. Now here they're like having him absorb the nuclear reactor. Then he goes in and kills Tiamat in a very hard to see battle because of all the foam in the water. And then he soaks up all of Tiamat's energy, and he just is like on steroids.
Well, he's just trying to be well prepared, compared to what he tried to do the last time, which he wasn't quite prepared in that regard. But
that actually, do we want to talk about that backstory, or do? You know what? Let's talk about that backstory after we talk about the Kaiju here.
But as far as the Godzilla in here, I mean, he's just Godzilla, the sort of the same usual design that we've seen since 2019. Although, as far as the evolved version of Godzilla in here, leaner, and I think he's more athletically active once he evolves here, and
he seems even angrier.
Yeah, especially with with all the power that he absorbs and everything, and with his heat ray when he fires that thing off in evolved form, it seems much more powerful in the way, especially when he was firing up. Ready to blast Scar King towards the end. There you just see all this like radiation, like pink and blue colors and stuff, kind of like an aura evolving around Godzilla there, like powering up like a huge blast and everything. Now, to me, it also felt like kind of like the Burning Godzilla version of the way when he powers up and with the heat ray and all that. Yeah, it's. I think it's a pretty good design. I don't know. I'm not sure if there's some sort of time limit with the Evolved. Probably not. With how he looks, in a way, if they do another sequel for Godzilla versus Kong here, I'm assuming he'll carry that through all the way, whatever the reason. But as far as Kong, he seems a bit more mature and a little bit more.
He's more gray, I noticed.
Grayer, kind of in the beard. Yeah, seems a little bit beat up, and I think he's a little bit bulkier this time compared to Godzilla versus Kong, like kind of in the upper torso area, especially when he goes up against like Scar King the first time around. It's like he was freaking massive compared to Scar King there.
Yeah, I mean, I like Kong a lot here too. I thought and I'm not saying he wasn't likable in versus Kong, but I just thought his persona was more relatable, I guess, maybe this time around than it was the previous film. And I really dug that. I was hoping though he would I found it funny though, like when Suko initially like was biting him, he even used Suko as a weapon. I'm like,
yeah,
I think Suko should have died from that, because not only is Kong swinging him around, but he's also using him as a battering weapon. Like that should have like broken his neck or bashed his skull in. Like, but he was still very forgiving of Suko. Even Suko like 2 or 3 times tried killing him. Mm-hmm. But it's just, and it's just Kong being a little bit different this time.
And during that whole sequence when he first meets Suko and stuff, like for some reason in my mind, I kind of was harking back to like the 76 or the 86 King Kong in a way, just how he sort of acted in a way. That's sort of what I was feeling in a way with this version of Kong here.
I thought that a few times during the movie. Like at times I'm like, this is sort of a combo, between those 2 films where there's like a brutality to him, but then at times there's this gentleness. But again, that's always been Kong. I would argue, though, the 76 and 86 movies were sort of the first ones in which they were able, I think, to express it better than they could before, because with stop motion, they could do some things with it, but not to the extent that they could when they had animatronics brought in. And then, of course, with the suits from Toho, you don't even go there. So, I thought that a few times. Suko, I initially thought maybe they pulled a fast one on us. I thought maybe Suko was actually a villain of sorts when he came in. I'm like, he is biting Kong, and then he tried to kill Kong again with that serpent in that lake. I thought, oh dear, like maybe Suko is not a good guy. And I'm like, if I were Kong, I would have killed that little thing a lot sooner.
But as the film went on and stuff, and then when we go into the Scar King lair there, and then Suko kind of interacting with this one other giant ape there, I'm assuming it could have been his father in a way there, how he reacted to when they were interacting with one another, and then when Scar King comes out, confronts Khan there, and then he just sort of back kicks that exact ape into that pool of lava there, and then Suko just kind of screaming and crying and all that stuff.
I don't think Zuko was that one ape's child, because if you remember, there's this moment, I think it's a little bit later in the movie, I think it's even after that sequence in the lair, you see, I think it was after this one ape came back and told Scar King that there were portals within the Iwi underground society. Scar King had a harem with several babies. I think Zuko is the son of Scar King, one of the sons of Scar King, because Scar King is one of those that, you know, is very brutal and seems as if he's going to make the bloodline pure and make it his own. The only one that's of the males anyways that's allowed to breed in that society is him. So I really think Zuko is his son.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
I mean, who knows? We may never know, because a lot of the apes that were pretty much in that whole quarry were basically males in there, and just the way that Zuko interacted towards that one other ape, I'm
thinking that could even be a surrogate parent, though.
Assume it might have been, but who knows? But what are your thoughts on the two new kaiju to the MonsterVerse and Scar King and Shimo?
I would have first and foremost liked to have seen more of them, especially Scar King, because he's the bigger bad in this film. So I'm going to come out and say that right out of the gate. It would have been nice to see more of them. I really like him a lot. Like, I look at Shimo as sort of the opposition to Godzilla. If Godzilla's fire, Shimo's ice. So I kind of thought that. I thought it was kind of interesting. They were saying like the previous ice ages were the result of Shimo. I thought, oh, that's kind of creative. Scar King himself, I really dug. I think he's a real cool kaiju villain. We know he's brutal because not only did he kick that one ape into the pool of lava, but we see as we kind of first enter the lair of the apes underneath Hollow Earth, there were 3 other ape heads on pikes down there. So we know he rules with a very tough iron fist. And I know they probably don't want to go too far with the brutality because they understand that these types of movies are also kind of for younger audiences. So they probably couldn't have gone too far with the violence. But I still would have liked on some level to have seen more brutality on his part. I like the fact that they brought in this, speaking of Scar, Scar King in some ways sort of remind me of Scar from the Lion King film, because there was this sort of
same here.
there was this interesting mocking personality to Scar King that sort of reminded me of Scar from the Lion King. And I like that what they did with Scar King, you know, like he checks out like Kong's new metal tooth and just kind of points and laughs at him and all that too. What I find interesting too is kind of his lanky body structure. He's not big and buff like Kong, but he's tall and lanky. And he sort of like when you first see him stand up, like he's kind of got this almost like drunken man's pose.
Or kind of like a Joker type of stance. In a way. And I will also have to add in, besides the brutality, just the way how he interacted with Khan and, you know, facing off against him, that not only he's brutal, but he's cunning and intelligent in a way. And he has some pretty good skills in that matter.
Yeah, and his lankiness allows him, I think, to be more agile in some respects, because that was his strength, was that, like you said, he's very intelligent, he's cunning, but he's also agile. Because Kong is kind of like this Hulk, and then Scar King is just, you know, more of an acrobat of sorts, and how he utilizes it. And then, of course, too, with Shimo, he's got, is it one of Shimo's like crystals from its back or something? I've never figured out where that came from.
I would like to say or assume that it could have been maybe possibly part of Shimo, just the way how it looked and comparing all the other crystals that were on or part of Shimo in that regard. But it could have, or it just could have been maybe like some sort of quote unquote kryptonite to Shimo, just to kind of like order Shimo around and to do it. And this is also, I would say that this would be Scar King's biggest arsenal, or kind of like his nuclear weapon in a way, in utilizing Shimo's power to sort of reign over his empire that he created.
Yeah, I see, and this is one thing I wish the movie would have done better, which was to sort of like, it didn't have to be anything convoluted or overly long, but just to sort of either show us or even just tell us in a brief like line of dialogue like what that was that he used to control Shimo.
But when I first saw that, and then kind of seeing Shimo for the first time kind of enchained, whenever that is destroyed or something of the sort, that Shimo was going to turn on Scar King in the end. And that's exactly what happened.
You beat me to the punch.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like that to me, like I knew he was controlling Shimo, because even in the US trailers, when he's down there, you see him like, you know, staring as these two blue eyes are staring at him. I knew Shimo was a weapon. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I hope they don't do it, but they probably will, in that Shimo's going to eventually turn on Scar King and more or less end Scar King for the movie. And that's what happened. We're kind of jumping to the end just a tad bit there. But I do like these two kaiju. Like I would have liked to have seen more of them, especially Scar King. And I think, and I'm going to start with the hieroglyphics thing here, because I think this is important to sort of talk about in this film, but also to explain Godzilla just a tad as well, where they were saying through exposition in these hieroglyphics in the Iwi, I almost said Kiwi, in the Iwi society, that thousands or so years ago, that, you know, there was the Society of Great Apes, but one of them, Scar King, wanted to conquer the upper world. And so then he had all these apes go and attack, and there was a great war between Godzilla and these apes. Godzilla eventually won and entombed them all in this subterranean area. And ever since then, Scar King's been trying to figure out a way to get back up to the surface. And the reason why Godzilla was doing what he was doing is he's preparing better this time, because I guess it almost killed him that last time that battle happened. So he's prepping himself so that way he's more powerful. He can try to maybe end the fight sooner than he did last time. Here's where I think this is a criticism I have of the movie right here in this hieroglyphic thing. They could have even shown us more of the kaiju, and I think it would have been better storytelling, that instead of telling that backstory through the I'm getting tongue-tied with this now, hieroglyphics, what they should have done is done a flashback scene in sequences of like showing Scar King, like, you know, turning on the other apes and ordering the other apes to go after Godzilla. And we're seeing like Godzilla fight the apes and Scar King, and then eventually entombing them. That I think would have been, not only would you have gotten both of those monsters on screen just a little bit longer, I think it would have been more effective storytelling, because not only are you getting more monster action, but you could even illustrate a little bit more brutality of Scar King, and really maybe just build some more excitement for what's about to happen with the film too, as Scar King's preparing to try to reach the surface again. Yeah,
and with the runtime of this movie, I think it's probably the shortest of the.
It's actually Godzilla vs. Kong is still the shortest. This is longer than that by like 9 minutes, I think.
So with it being just 5 minutes under 2 hours, they would have had plenty of time to have done something like that. It would have been, I would say, something kind of along the lines of that Zack Snyder Justice League, where they did the whole backstory with oh shoot, I forget the name of Darkseid, where they did the backstory of Darkseid with all like the whole battle and everything. I think that would have been really great.
Yeah,
if they did it for here as well. And the one other interesting thing in a creative way, how the writers and Wingard did this for Godzilla Kong, is that we all know from the two different franchises, Godzilla and Kong here, where you had a tribe or a culture on Skull Island, the Iwis, and then on the Godzilla side, you had like the tribe from Infant Island. It's really creative and nice in how they pretty much kind of combine those two tribes from the two franchises as being one the same here, where they with the Iwis down below, where they worship and prophesize Mothra in a way. And I know we're going to be getting into this in a bit, where we see the whole prophecy with Gia being prophesized as being the last of Skull Island to revive Mothra, which she does later on in the movie.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go in a couple different directions with this. First and foremost, like, I understand that they were saying this was a subterranean thing of Iwis, but were there just like they underground and the other went to Skull Island? I could never figure that out.
I think they did with the original story, that they started from below, and then like the ones that went to Skull Island sort of separated from the Hollow Earth version. And then just all of a sudden, with the whole story of them being wiped out from the storm, and Gia being the only one left.
Yeah. And I had heard with Mothra that Mothra was I had heard rumors. Again, this was something that sadly, stupid people online were telling. I'm just like, oh crap. But initially I had heard she was in a dream sequence. But then, as I watched the movie, I realized, I think Mothra is actually going to come back. And yeah, she did. I'm like, well, I know Mothra is sort of this god of sorts, but she was killed in 19. Like, how is she coming back? But at the same time, I liked seeing her.
I mean, come on, it's Mothra. Well, we all know the whole lore to that.
Well, I know, but the MonsterVerse more or less was it for a while up until this movie. It was basically taking this route of once something was dead, it was dead. That's kind of the route this particular franchise was taking. And so I was sort of surprised to actually see her back. And like I said, I'm not complaining, because I like this version of Mothra quite a bit. I like her.
And I can understand the reason how she was put in here as being the bridge to communicate with Godzilla into helping out Kong go down to Hollow Earth and helping him beat the living daylights out of Scar King and Shimo.
Yeah, well, I guess we might as well talk about the fights now. Like, Kong actually just pummels Godzilla. Well, then he pummels him up in Egypt for a while, and I'm like, oh crap, Godzilla's gonna be dead here.
Well, and then
Godzilla's just like, whoa.
Well, and then Godzilla sort of came back and sort of did the same thing with Kong, and then especially when he does a suplex.
I like Kong that. I'm like, oh, that's WWE style there. He does the suplex. I thought it was funny too. Like, after Kong pummeled Godzilla, he starts dragging him by the tail to take him to the portal.
Yeah.
And like, not only is that funny, but then the fact too that Godzilla starts revving up and just kind of quietly turns and starts laughing. And Kong's like, oh shit, man, like, gets to drop and run.
Well, and it's the same thing too when Kong's trying to tell him to go down with him there, when he's running towards Kong there, and then all of a sudden he goes like, no, stop. And then he just like Godzilla
so roided up.
Godzilla does a spear on Kong and goes through the one of the giant pyramids.
Yeah, Godzilla's having none of it. I was a little surprised though. I mean, I could still see Godzilla being somewhat antagonistic, but because they had teamed up against Mechagodzilla, I thought there would be a little bit more like pause for a moment and being like, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to kick your butt just yet. Like, what do you have to say?" Like,
yeah,
but no, I guess maybe don't do steroids, people. Look at what it makes you do. You want to beat up everything that moves, but. I still think the shot of the movie, they come down, Godzilla and Kong through Hollow Earth and crash into it and then come out of the rubble and they're running towards Scar King and his army. I still think that's the scene of the movie right there. And then Kong riding Godzilla.
Well, I think the one other scene too is that when they slow down the scene where you see all four of them with the Scar King and Kong like in mid-air, and the same goes for Shimo and Godzilla. Like you just see all four of them in kind of this whole wide shot sort of things, like shit's about to go down here, and then all of a sudden you have this anti-gravity thing coming into play, and then you just see all these other apes, Scar King, Kong, Shimo, and Godzilla. Especially Godzilla, holy shit, when he's in anti-gravity mode, he's just all over the place and just being really agile there.
Yeah, he's swimming. And I was hoping Godzilla would have gotten after Scar King more because they had a history there, as they had told like a little bit earlier in the film through those hieroglyphics. But I guess maybe they thought Godzilla was so overpowered that even though Scar King is pretty agile himself, that Godzilla maybe would have taken him out within a moment. But it's like Scar King could have held his own enough. Like he could have somehow gotten away, like gotten a few hits in from each one, and then somehow they get separated or whatever.
But
I was hoping for more of that between those two.
But I can understand with Wingard, probably he wanted Godzilla to face Shimo more because I think both of them kind of suit each other more, and then the same goes with Scar King and Kong there, that they're more suited to face off against one another. And also, I would say with Scar King, I think it could be like a new sort of arch nemesis towards Kong, kind of like what King Ghidorah or Mechagodzilla is to Godzilla in a way. Whenever they maybe try to use Scar King sometime in the future in some other sort of project, I think that could be really cool down the road.
Yeah, I would, and one could even argue too that Shimo's even stronger than Scar King. I mean, Scar King's agile, but I think eventually, like if they were to fight each other one-on-one on equal grounds, I think Shimo eventually gets Scar King. So, I mean, there's that argument, but one other little criticism I have about this film is that I was hoping we would have gotten more time on the surface with Scar King and Shimo and the Ape Society, because the trailers, and I don't know, maybe it's my fault, and the trailer people probably would say, well, yeah, it's your fault. But I thought with the trailers, the way they set things up, to me, it seemed like eventually Scar King and that society got to the surface, started creating enough havoc, and that maybe Kong and Godzilla faced off with them once and got injured and had to retreat. That the reason why Godzilla became evolved was because after he got his butt kicked, that he had to go and somehow get more powerful. That's what I thought was going to happen in the movie, that those two would fight Scar King and Shimo earlier in the film, get the crap kicked out of him and have to retreat and then come back stronger. But that's not how it goes. And I was slightly disappointed we didn't get more surface level destruction by Scar King and his society. I was hoping for like this big army to come and cause havoc. We really didn't get that. It was just Scar King and Shimo facing off against Godzilla and Kong. And while it was still entertaining, I would have liked it to have been longer, and I would have liked it to have been more chaotic. Because, like I said, I was under the impression that maybe Scar King, like middle through the movie, got his society up there and started causing issues. But that's not how it goes.
And kind of in what I mentioned earlier, as far as my nitpick of being a little bit too fast paced. I think the runtime for the movie, I think, sort of is kind of the cause of it in a way. Maybe extend it out a little bit more, especially when we discuss as far as adding the sequences of the backstory to that whole hieroglyphics thing when they were talking about that in the Iwi temple there. Do that sort of thing, and then I would say probably extend maybe an extra half hour to 40 minutes to the movie. I think that probably would have been pretty good for it, and also sort of slow the pace a little bit in that regard. And as far as some of the visual effects, there were some certain areas, especially like when Godzilla was coming out of the Coliseum from his nap there, and then you see him go along that river. I think that
shot did look a little off. Yeah,
it seemed that it needed a little bit more polishing in that regard. Oh, and speaking of which, in that whole sequence where you see this one shot of the spray paint Godzilla kind of on this building and stuff, you see how that like the concrete kind of comes up when he steps down. That's actually a nod. And I saw a post on this that Wingard and the visual effects guy saw the shot from Godzilla -1, and that's actually a nod to that one shot in Godzilla -1.
With the cement?
Yeah, when he steps down, you see the concrete streak kind of come up.
Okay.
That's actually a nod to that.
Yeah, there were a lot of little like Easter eggs. Like one of the trolls Bernie was talking about was Ghidorah something 64. 64 being the year of the original Ghidorah movie.
And then also the gargantuan insurance thing.
Yeah, there was that too. There was, for those of us that are seasoned fans, there were lots of little nods. And here's the thing, we're talking about how I still don't think the pace is as fast as you say it is, but, maybe you look at things a little bit differently than I do. I have no problem with the pace, but the more I've thought about it since watching it yesterday, considering the fact that if, roughly halfway or so through the film, like we've been saying, the human characters are sort of commentating on, on what's going on with the monsters. Wingard and his crew try to create, an extension of the human character stories, which is fine. But after seeing it and thinking about it, I'm realizing, what, maybe it shouldn't have mattered much. Like, I think what they should have done is actually either entirely cut out certain sequences of the human character story or shortened it up quite a bit. And then you could have used that spare time more for the kaiju because, there's this whole, sequence or two earlier in the film about Gia not feeling like she belongs anywhere. And it does, sort of come into play later when they find the Iwi tribe in Hollow Earth. But none of it in the general sense still even matters much. And same thing with Bernie. He's just continuing to do his podcast. I think some of that stuff, the only reason why he's in the story is that Dr. What's her name? What's her name? Dr. Andrews or
let me
I want to say Andrews.
Yeah, it is Andrews.
Okay, that Dr. Andrews comes to him, and I think isn't she
Eileen Andrews.
She's wanting to know if through his connections, right, that he can understand something because he has connections to certain people.
He sort of thinks outside.
Oh,
the box.
He thinks outside the box. Yeah, and look, I like Bernie. He's not my favorite character of all time, but I do like him. I just, again, like I said, the more I think about it, these characters, I don't know if they were either the right ones for this movie or if I still think their involvement should have been cut down at least more, because in the grand scheme of things, with how the story ended up being told, it didn't matter. But I really sort of wish that part of me misses like Millie Bobby Brown, Kyle Chandler, some of those characters. The Skarsgård guy, I keep forgetting. Is it Stellan? I keep getting mixed up between him and his brother.
I don't know. I don't have the
either way. One of the Skarsgård guy from the last film. I mean, the characters here were fine. I think the actor's name is Alex Ferns that plays Trapper.
Dan Stevens.
Geez, I got that off. Wasn't even close. But yeah, I liked him the most because he had more personality about him. And I mean, again, look, here's the thing. Let's be honest. And I know there's some people out there that are going to be gatekeepers about it. And to those, I just say, quit being gatekeepers. Let's face it, we watch these movies mainly because of these guys. Mm-hmm. These are the guys that we go to see the movies for. And so having bland human characters shouldn't be much of a problem. But at the same time, I do think in some movies it is important to have good human character moments. I've always said that, in my opinion, Monster Zero probably has some of the best character work out of most of the live action Godzilla films. And because the monster action is so very short in that film, you need to have strong human characters. And in fact, that's a movie where the human characters are the only ones that are pushing the action forward. They're reacting more to what other humans, whether it's the Zeons or the humans on Earth, are reacting to, and the monsters are just involved in that conflict. And again, they're different movies, and that's fine. That is perfectly fine. Not every movie is going to be made for everybody. Not every movie is going to suit your taste, etc. And so, but to me, though, this is one of those films in the franchise where human characters really don't matter. And as a result, I would have liked to have had the human characters cut back more and have more monster involvement. Again, this would have been a perfect opportunity to include more Godzilla, more Scar King, etc.
Or at least
thought about it.
Or at least just extend the runtime of the movie itself, because
a
lot of movies nowadays average around 2.5 hours in that regard.
And I don't like that. I've gotten to the point, and I've even seen a lot of other people complain about this. I'm actually at the point in my life where I'm tired of 2.5+ hour films. I am not totally against it if you can utilize that time well, but I just almost think a lot of Hollywood films are long for the sake of making it seem like they are more epic than they actually are. And I miss the days of the hour and a half, hour 45, 2 hour long movies, because let's face it, it just seems like with every 10, 20 years, life seems to get in our way, and there are a bunch of other things like fighting for our attention, that it's gotten to the point, even for me, to sit down and watch a 2.5 hour movie, I almost have to plan it out a day ahead of time at least. Whereas before, that never was the case. Like a 2.5 hour movie, if I wanted to watch anytime, sure, I could do it. Now it's like, oh, I actually have to plan to watch this 2.5 hour movie now. And, then you get other longer movies, your Lord of the Rings or your Peter Jackson King Kong or whatever. Like, you are actually having to be like, I got to pre-plan when I'm going to do this. And I don't like that anymore. I don't like movies that are 2.5 hours long anymore. I just think I think superhero movies to some extent are partially to blame for this, because so many of those were like over 2 hours, and few of them I thought utilized that runtime effectively. I think the Nolan films did, because those were that Dark Knight trilogy. I don't care what anyone says. I think that that's the greatest superhero trilogy still that's ever been made. The Batman was real good too. I think that utilized its 3-hour runtime pretty well too. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the other ones, it's just like, man, you could have cut that out. You could have cut that out. Like, and I think maybe it would have made some of those movies better, if you trimmed them down a bit. Zack Snyder's Justice League. I really like that movie, but 4 hours? Really? I mean, come on. I kind of am at a point in my life where, like, I remember growing up when we thought a movie was 2 hours long, we thought that was long, because you and I grew up with movies that were hour and a half, a little bit less, maybe a little bit longer than an hour and a half. But then once we started watching movies that were 2 hours, you and I were like, oh my gosh, that's long. Like,
I think probably one of the first ones that we encountered with that was Jurassic Park, I believe, when that came out. For me, it would have been like
the first 2 Rocky movies, because those are pushing 2 hours apiece.
Yeah.
But
oh well.
But yeah, like I just remember there was a time where we were like, 2 hours, that's a long movie. and now it's like 2 hours is a short movie now. It's just, it's kind of funny how things have changed.
It's like, oh man, wish we could see more of this. Why didn't they make the runtime a little bit longer?
I like I said, I'm all for longer films if you use that time effectively, and a lot of movies I think don't. But I will give this. I will give The New Empire this, though. This is, as I wrote on my Facebook page yesterday, Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire is the pure definition of fun at the movies. Like I said, I went in expecting nothing more than to be entertained. That's exactly what I got here. I mean, again, like I said, this movie's not perfect. I think the special effects, other than a couple small shots, terrific. Again, I would have done the hieroglyphic scene into a flashback. I would have liked to have seen more of Scar King and Shimo. I would have liked for Scar King and his army to have actually reached the surface, cause more havoc, and send Godzilla and Kong into retreat, and then have them sort of regroup after that for the final battle. Seeing Mothra is terrific. Human characters, even though they're memorable only because we've seen them in the previous movie, by and large, though, if you were seeing this without having seen Godzilla versus Kong before this, forgettable. But this
probably
is
one of the most forgettable
movie.
Human characters in the MonsterVerse so far.
Yeah, and I want more like this. I mean, like I said, to me, Wingard's biggest issue, though, is somehow not bringing enough Godzilla to the table.
Or that even trying to utilize them in a certain way.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I thought he was going to do much. He did, I think, take steps in the right direction with this film. I thought he corrected some of it here. But again, like I thought, we were getting a slightly different movie where Scar King came up, started causing havoc, Godzilla and Kong come in, but then get their butts kicked, go back, regroup, and then at the end of the movie, they come back and have the big final battle. Because that would have been another way to have made it more epic. That would have been another way to put in more Scar King and Godzilla and Shimo, and just more monster action in general. And instead, it's not. It's a slower burn. And I was looking forward to the possibility of those two groups going at each other twice in the movie, but that just didn't happen. And I know my opinion of that will change the more I watch the movie in the future, which I hope to see it again in this upcoming week, because I really do want to go see this one again. But this is just a lot of fun, and I might as well just, because I've already kind of talked about the movie as a whole. I'm giving this an A+, just because it's a lot of fun. It's not perfect, but you know what? I watch movies first and foremost to be entertained, and I was entertained by this. I had a fun time with this. I think, to be quite honest, I had more fun with this movie than I did Godzilla versus Kong. And I think, again, part of that was just expectations. I went in expecting Showa style, balls to the walls, goofy action here. That's what I got. And, you know, I want more of this. I just, if there's a sequel and Wingard comes back on, I would like him to add more Godzilla to the story. That's about the only thing I could say that needs to be corrected again in the future. But I love this movie. I recommend seeing, especially if you like the Showa era films.
You know, we forgot to talk about the score to the movie.
I have not listened to it myself, so I have no opinion on it.
Well, as far as what you have heard when watching the movie.
As far as it being utilized in the film, definitely, in many ways, I think it's very similar to what we got with Godzilla vs. Kong, in that you have certain riffs and other pieces of music that were used in that movie brought back here. Some of it was slightly redone. It did its job. I thought it complemented the movie well. I can't say anything was really rousing or got me off my seat because of the music, but I thought it did its job and complementing what was happening on the screen very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when I listened to it, and then I mentioned to you my response after listening to the soundtrack that I thought was pretty good, a pretty good soundtrack in that it felt kind of feel that epic and grandeur type of vibe to it, and maybe a little bit of a superhero type of thing, because you can sort of get that vibe when watching the movie there, when both Godzilla and Kong team up to beat the living shit out of Scar King and Shima there. And yeah, I'd say it pretty much fits what it needed to do for the movie in that regard. And as far as was it Junkie XL, and then I forget the other guy's name. I think he might he might be Italian
or Antonio something. Yeah,
Italian or Spanish. The way that the name is. I think the additional guy, because this is the first time I see Junkie XL teaming up with another person just for a Godzilla movie, because I think the last movie
it's Tom Holkenberg. Is that Junkie?
Yeah, Junkie XL. That he sort of goes by two different names and stuff. Okay. But yeah, I think the last movie Tom did it by himself, but then now he brings on another person in this one. I think the additional guy, I think he kind of does
Antonio Di Iorio.
I think he probably does more of the orchestra sort of stuff, whereas Tom, he kind of does more of like the electronical
stuff,
synthesizing type of music and all that. And I think with them combined, I think really make a pretty good soundtrack for this movie. But yeah, since Ken already did his rating here, yeah, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire to me is a really fun, enjoyable movie, and it just pretty much just gets the point straight across. It's just pure action. I would say 90%, maybe 95% throughout the entire movie, with just a lot of kaiju action. And it just sort of like, you never really get much of a breathing room with this movie. And with the human characters, yeah, as again, probably the most forgettable human characters in the MonsterVerse so far. The visual effects, I would say majority of it is really good, but there are some certain areas where I think that could have needed some polishing here and there. The soundtrack is pretty good in here. The battles are really good. the addition of Scar King and Shimo in here are really good. I like how Scar King is not only brutal but intellectual and agile in here, and then Shimo just kind of being the heavy gun for Scar King, but also being under control at the same time too, but then kind of free and just turns against Scar King right away towards the end of the movie there. Yeah, it's really good. And earlier, my only nitpick is it felt a little bit too fast paced in a way, just like with everything kind of thrown at you and not giving you much breathing room. Like what I say was the action throughout the entire movie is about 95% of the time. And here it would be nice to maybe just slow the pacing down a little bit just to kind of give you some breathing room from time to time. But nevertheless, that's just my only nitpick on the movie. So with that, Godzilla Kong, The New Empire, I'm going to give this one barely a B+, just under an A-.
Barely a B+. Oh, wow. I thought it would have been higher than that.
Yeah. To me, it's just more or less kind of the pacing of it.
Oh, well, let me get my son here and he'll share his thoughts.
All right. And so for the time being, while Kent is grabbing his son here, if you see a subscribe button down below or above, wherever you're watching us from, make sure to hit that. And as well, smash the like button and click the notification bell icon to get notified whenever we have a new video, coming up. And you can find us everywhere. And if I can find the screen capture, you can find us everywhere at our Linktree URL at Gogo Kaiju Show, and you can see us at the following video platforms and audio platforms as well. So here we are.
All right, so
Link,
here's Lincoln. I got to put the earbuds in him so he can hear what's going on. Maybe you can have a conversation with him.
I guess, yeah.
He's in your ear so you can hear what's going on, and you can.
I'm really able to put this to stay in.
So, Link, what did you think of Godzilla Kong: The New Empire?
Good.
Is that all you got?
No.
So what? Jason can ask you the question since I can't hear anything.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of a question. What do you think of Scar King and Shimo?
I like how they made them look. It's like personality too. Mm-hmm. And it's like an orange and white gorilla who could be Kong Time, but no one knows. And Shimo, the female, was actually supposed to be in 2021's Godzilla vs. Kong, but they were like, we already have Mecha Godzilla. That's more than enough. So they put him here. And I like how it's just the fact that she's so cold. She can literally, like, freeze something with a bunch of lava. Like, it so bad it can cause frostbite.
Yeah. So what did you think of the kaiju battles in the movie?
Insanity, chaos, my level A+. My type of chaos.
I think so, because when I saw this, like, I think it's sort of right up your alley there. As far as the human characters, they didn't do a whole lot, but what did you think of the human side of the story?
Pretty good, but considering we only saw... I still feel like I'm wondering why we only saw... I forgot her name, but we thought who was one of the last Iwis, like
Gia.
Yeah, Gia, and like the black-haired person, like
Eileen
once.
Andrews.
Yeah, Andrews like only once.
Well, you saw him more than once in the movie.
I thought no, because like hair color must have changed.
Yep. And what'd you think of Mothra returning?
Crazy, because Dad told me like once something in the MonsterVerse is dead, it's dead. But I'm like, holy smokes, we just went backwards back to 2019. Except this isn't 2019; it's 2024.
Yep. So I think I've got maybe one or two more questions. My next question is, what did you think of the visual effects? Did you think it's really good in this movie, or do you think maybe they need a little bit of polishing up in certain areas of the movie?
Really good. It's always been like that in the MonsterVerse movies. I don't know how they do it. One reason is technology is upgraded, though, that's for sure.
As always. So, my last question to you is, what is your letter grade from A plus, A, or all the way down to F for this movie? And how would you rank this movie among the other MonsterVerse films?
An A plus, and I'm always getting stuck between good movies and putting them in between the 2014 and 2019 movies. It's like it's so hard to choose. I can't choose, but I feel like
that's always the hard part.
But I feel like since I have to choose one, I'd feel like it would be the one we're talking about right now.
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions that I have for you there.
You've been freezing up a little on my side, by the way.
Oh yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, that's probably your dad's side of his computer there. So yeah, I think that's all I've got for you. So if you want to bring your dad back on and see if he might have any other questions for you.
Do you have anything more to say?
Well, I got to close out my show. It's my show.
You gotta close the door.
All right. Okay, you can get ready for Easter eggs there. All right. Thank you, buddy. So there you go. The thoughts of a 9-year-old on Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. So unless you have something to add, we can close this sucker out.
Well, since one of my questions to him there is like, how would you rank this movie within the MonsterVerse? How would you rank the New Empire within the MonsterVerse?
Well, that's a tough question because I need more specifics. Because if it would be no, seriously, because
like father, like son.
I would like, if we're talking about technicality, like how well it's made, my ranking would be different in terms of my ranking from what I like. Mm-hmm. So, like, how are you asking?
Well, just overall in general, how would you put the New Empire within the MonsterVerse?
Okay, so I'm going to go on the fun level then. So as far as the fun level, this is at the top. And then after that, I would say then it's probably King of the Monsters versus Kong, 14, and Skull Island in terms of the fun factor. That's not to say I dislike those bottom ones. You know, I like those movies. I like the whole MonsterVerse an awful lot. But then if I'm talking about technical standpoints, I would say 14's at the top, followed by Skull Island. And then after that, I would say probably boy, then it gets kind of tough because then from King of the Monsters through this one, they're very similar. I maybe would say King of the Monsters slightly. Then yeah, versus Kong, and then this one from a technical standpoint. But again, like my basis is entertainment, and yeah, I still think the 2014 film is the best out of this entire franchise. I still think it's entertaining as well. To be honest, I think it's got some, if not the best human characters so far, the Monsterverse. So yeah, what about you?
Oh boy, yeah. I probably would put 2014 at the top there, and along with Skull Island. And then after that, I probably would put GVK next. And then I probably would then put GXK after that, and then King of the Monsters after that.
As your favorites?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think, like I said before I went and got Lincoln, I think if you are a fan at all of the Showa-style Godzilla films, which a lot of people are, I think there's something here for you. I really do. Maybe for some of those, it's nothing more than the final 15 or so minutes of the movie where most of it is the monster action. For others, it's maybe the whole thing. Others, it may be other multiple pieces of the film. But this is real good. I think that this to me is, what it means to have fun at the films.
Yeah. And if you just want to turn off your brain, that's sort of... This movie is sort of right up your alley if you want to get away from something after a while.
Yeah, you just escape reality. This is good escapist entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that. I know, again, I've said it before, there are people who take the whole turn off your brain phase when it comes to film watching as an insult, but it's like, no, there are like... Just like there are different genres of entertainment, there's different types of movies.
Yeah, it's like if
there's got to be something for everybody, because thought-provoking films and stuff are nice. I'm not against them, but you know what? They require a lot more energy, and sometimes that's exhausting to do because some of those movies really force you to pay attention. I love the Godzilla anime trilogy, but I will say I'm exhausted after watching them because they do force you to think about things. They force you to pay attention. And then there are days where it's just like, I want to throw in Godzilla versus Megalon and just watch monsters beat the crap out of each other. That's all I want. So,
or sometimes, like, if you want good human story, whereas this one, there's very minimal and they're pretty forgettable. There's other kaiju movies out there, especially with Godzilla Minus One. A lot of people say that that's kind of the gold standard for kaiju movies when it comes to human character development or story, for that matter. So you got that, and then maybe the 2005 King Kong movie there. I mean, there's just the whole kaiju genre. There's various amounts of human development or story for any kind of person that you might be interested in.
Well, yeah, and we've said this before many times. There's a reason why there's so many different takes on Godzilla, not only because other people just have different ideas, but it's what keeps this character and its franchise fresh. We've said it many times before. It's sort of like comic book characters. You had Batman start off dark and serious, and then you had a period where he was just real goofy and silly. And then he went dark again, and now he's somewhere in the middle a little. He's not really dark and silly, but he's like still a little bit dark, but not as serious. And that's how all this stuff endures, is that there's experimentation, then there are just other things where, things do have a formula that do work out. I mean, again, much of the Showa era was Godzilla in some way being a superhero, and that was very popular. That's what kept Godzilla afloat for probably an extra 10 years after those first couple films, was that it was all about saving the world from something. Even though some of those earlier films where he was a superhero and he was somewhat neutral, he wasn't straight up bad, but he was neutral. He was in the process of becoming a pure superhero there. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like some of those films. I love Monster Zero, and I adore Sea Monster. I like Gigan. I like Terra Mega Godzilla and that sort of thing. But I also do like the serious films too. We said on this podcast a few months back with -1. -1 is spectacular. It is a fantastic movie. But I also enjoy a movie like this where it's just straight up just monster saving the day from other monsters. So nothing wrong with that.
Okay, broke the Skippy thing again.
The what?
The Skippy thing.
Oh, okay. Another toy is broken.
Yeah. Surprise. Yeah, we were kind of that way too. So,
well, no, these are those skippers you put on your ankle. I was telling the kids when I bought them another one yesterday, I said the skippers of today aren't as durable as they were when we were growing up.
Weren't they kind of like those little, kind of like the hopper thing? Yeah.
Yeah. The ones of today don't last 5 minutes.
Yeah, shocker. But anyways, yeah, that kind of pretty much covered it. Anything? Is there anything else?
Yes, let's discuss right now, because I was going to actually ask you before coming on. I forgot. So what's the plan moving forward here? Are we having a podcast next week or not? Like what's going on, here?
Well, since this is going to be our last live stream that we're going to be doing, since we're going to be moving to pre-recording.
Thank God. I've been begging that for a while.
I would say, let me just bring up the calendar here. Because you said that you were wanting to do a podcast on Sunday starting next month for a little bit.
Yeah, because of again, actually here, I think it's not this upcoming week, but it's the week after, like soccer practices and flag football practice. Here's a problem now. Okay. He's in flag football now too, right? So soccer practices are during the weekdays, but soccer games are on Saturdays. And flag football games are on Sundays. And there's no straight set time for either one. It's not all soccer games are starting at the same time. Not all flag football games are starting at the same time. So, maybe we could still do them on Saturdays, and they would just be different times probably from week to week for a while. Or another idea would be, I could tell you the times of the flag football and soccer games during that particular week, and then we pick the one that maybe is earliest, like maybe because flag football is later or sooner, that's a problem.
How about this? Because the 7th is on a Sunday, and if I were women's basketball, go to the national championship, that's when the game starts. So probably I would say for those reasons, let's just not do a show on the 7th because of that. But then also I kind of want to get things finished up with the Go-Go Kaiju brand, and then kind of get things fully transitioned over at that time. and then kind of get things on my end to kind of start the process of doing like some of the editing stuff for the pre-recorded videos and all that. And then we can do a recording on the 14th. And then probably the first episode probably won't come out till, I would say, maybe the 20, maybe like the 27th or 28th of next month.
It's going to take 2 weeks to put an episode together.
Well, like I said, with us doing the episode every other week, like I need at least an extra week, and then to make some of the edits and all that.
Yeah, I know, but if we're recording like on the 14th, the episode's not coming out until the 27th. That's almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Holy shit. What I could even do too is like, let me just see what the game situation is, and then we can discuss it, like do it either the 14th or 15th.
Mm-hmm. Well, 15th is on a Monday.
Oh.
14th is on Sunday.
Well, then 13th or 14th then.
Okay.
Do it that way. I'm looking at March, and I keep forgetting I'm looking at March here.
Yeah, dummy.
Oh, well. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we will be back in a couple of weeks where we are continuing more with Ryder.
Yeah, so if you see a subscribe button down below or above wherever you're watching us from, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as smash the like button and hit the notification bell icon to get notified of any new videos coming from us. And you can find everything all in one place, our Linktree URL right there at GoGo Kaiju Show. And we're available on the following video platforms such as YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Facebook, and X/Twitter. And also available on the following audio platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. And you can find both video and audio episodes at our website at daikaijunetwork.com, soon to be gogokaijushow.com.
And so go see the movie, support it so we get more. It's a great time to be a kaiju fan. Godzilla's never been more mainstream than he has been now. Probably never even been more popular than what he is now. So support these movies.
Indeed. So with that,
if you don't like them, don't be a jerk. Don't ruin it for everybody else.
We'll see everyone next time. Take care, everyone.